Start recording and speak nice and loud. We're going.
All right, here he is, Mr. Ken Donze. He's up from Canton, Ohio. Works for Trend Micro. He's going to speak about POC for you today. I did this presentation. I noticed there's some errors when you already found it, that it had some cloud hybrid thing. Way too much marketing presentation for you guys, right? I came from this. My background, I've been doing security for decades almost. I was on the corporate side. I have been on the consulting side, not on the sales side. But one of the biggest things I find is related to the proof of concept phase, right? So I'm going to talk about what I've seen, what you can do to help out. We do a lot of these things, right, about who we are, what we did. I like to show the movie I was in. Every people remember in the 80s, we had Molly Ringwald, Andrew McCarthy. Well, there I am. You see that arrow? Yeah. Okay, just in case. There. Well, I have to show this to my parents because they didn't believe it was at college. Even though the report card showed that I was, well, I didn't really show all this classes, but I was at least at college at one point in my life. If you actually read, I was actually returning house, etc. So I thought it was kind of funny. Someone brought it up on Facebook a couple years back, and I thought, oh, I totally forgot about that. First time I used it in a presentation, I thought it was kind of funny. Okay, getting on to it, right? First part of any POC is know the problem, right? Where's it coming from, right? Is it the board asking for it? Is it a manager? Is it something driven by compliance, right? PCI, HIPAA, something. Or is it from Equifax, also the board got scared? Hey, we need to do something to scare ourselves, right? All those type of things. The other part of this, we're on the sales side, how many of these things don't? Because they don't know how much it costs, right? Cost is not necessarily how much it costs for that software, hardware, cost of your time, cost of your, maybe you need to hire someone else to do this. You get more systems to monitor this, so there's a cost. And are there real expectations realistic, right? A lot of times we get, so what do you want to protect? One of my questions. They go, we need to protect everything. All right. And I put that after a nice German general made that statement, right? Okay, some of you might have heard Sun Tzu. That's the same type of statement, right? How many people actually still do risk assessments before they purchase it? Okay, a few of you. I remember doing those a few years back, risk assessments, so it's kind of key to know what you need to protect and what not to protect. Did you dig into the problem? Did you, when that manager came down or that executive, he asked for the solution. Did you ask him why? What's driving this? What are you expecting out of the solution? What are they looking for in the problem, right? What are you trying to protect, right? You can't protect everything, right? Where are the keys at, right? Castle keys, right? It was not, we protect everyone in the neighborhood. We brought all inside the fort, then we protect everyone inside that fort. I hear a lot of times people just don't do that anymore. They actually think we can protect everything, and there's no possible way, right? There's not enough of you guys, there's enough technology, and there's too many other sides who are trying to get into those things, right? There's too many porous things. Now let's say, can it be protected, right? Maybe there is no solution for that. Okay. It's still potential today, right? Some operating systems. So they say explore your companies, right? How many people actually have vendors in your house? You buy software security from, right? Do you actually ever contact them before you look at another solution? We have a lot of times we'll come back in and we'll find out that they looked at a competitor's product, which is fine, it happens, but they never asked us, right? They didn't know that we did it. A lot of times it's a lot easier to get money support, a lot easier to manage because you already kind of know their solution sets. Especially if you try micro R interfaces, kind of the same. You don't have to relearn something new. Sometimes you do some integrations between products, right? And also our customers are constantly asking for new solutions. Hey, can you do, I remember, I'll bring out a marketing company I used to work with for years ago. Spyware was huge. And they were asking for us to provide a spyware protection. So our developers had to go out there and start programming that into their antivirus solution, right? But you guys are asking for this, and we're developing for that. So one of the things you can do is, once you get to a meeting, maybe once a year, fire alert, bring the sales staff in. What do you have? What are you currently using? Do you have anything? We're looking at doing something else in the market, right? We're looking at this type of security. And the other side is, I'm an SE. Hey, we just installed your new solution. Can you just look it over, right? At least set it up right. I'm not using all the new functions and features of that product. Most people install it out there, turn it on, and never really see what actually handguns are. They just keep it running. A lot of times because of time, right? So yeah, all they sell are, hey, bring us in. We're not going to do a hard sell most times. The R guys ourselves are all confident the money's made, but on the other side, I'm going to try to help you. My goal is to make sure that product is working for your environment. So once you go through that, oh wow, you got audio. Sure, why not? Sorry about that. Thank you for showing. Okay. Wow. I should warn you, I was a former scoutmaster, reformed, so I got used to yelling. Did I get too loud? Okay, so the short list, right? So you're going to go through, Google's your friend here, right? Look at the competitors. Don't just trust the trend, right? Look at other competitors. Then the other thing I like to do is, we like to pick on FireEye. They had some problems, right? Target was one of their solutions. Equifax was also FireEye. Now I'm trying to pick on FireEye. But look what other people have used. Have that solution been exposed, right, as problems? Maybe you want to kick that off on your list. You don't want to go through that process again. So what you're trying to do is build this thing, a list, to make your time more efficient. You want to prioritize that because there's a little bit more than just turning on and looking at it. Reason I bring up time, it's the number one reason POCs fail. You have to be realistic how much time it's going to take. You just can't, oh, it's Monday afternoon. Oh, yeah, I'm looking at trend. Let me look at the console for about 5 minutes. Okay, I got to go home, right? That's not really doing justification. This is your security solution in this case, right? You're going to have to depend on this working. Do you really want to spend 5 minutes to make sure it's working if you're going to go to it? So prioritize the time and get everyone involved, right? You're going to do a POC. It requires a piece of software. It's a server. Maybe get that server guy. Maybe it needs communications on the network side. Get the firewall guy involved. We tie into a SQL database. Get the SQL guy, all right. Again, when we're coming out there, this is your time. The more time you spend trying to get these guys in line, help you out, the less you're going to spend finding if that's the right solution. Now, I've seen some of this stuff take weeks. Well, the SQL server guy's not here. He doesn't have time. He can't get the firewall guy, so he just steps and steps. This is your time to find out the best thing off. I like to say, block it off. Monday, spend 2 hours on it, right? Or whatever, put time into it and make sure that's all you're going to do. Then make a test plan, right? What are you going to test for? Bring the other people. So if you have that executive come in, bring him in. So, okay, what do you want to see out of the solution, right? You're requiring HIPAA. Are you needing reports? What kind of reports are you going to see, right? That should be part of your POC because he's going to ask for that later, right? Once he gets in line, he's going, oh, show me the report. And you go, oh, here's a report. And he goes, this is not right. That's a failed POC, right? You got the wrong solution. Now you're scrambling trying to figure a way to make it work. And I say the plan should mimic your day, life, week, right? The idea is you're putting these things in, you get busy. Put that into scope. Put yourself as a busy situation, make a change. You want to mimic that situation. If it's very difficult to do when it's a lot of free time, imagine that situation when 14 people screaming they can't get to something or it's not working right, all those things. Mimic that as part of your plan. Plan to make mistakes. Again, that happens in reality, right? You're going to put a wrong rule in. You're going to put a wrong exclusion list in. All those variations, plan as your day. Maybe you have another one of your tech guys in your department, hey, go make a change to this and let me see if I can figure it out. Then make a support call, right? Because the other day, you're eventually going to have to call support. If support can't solve your problems, that's not a very good solution either. So make a plan to call support on something. How responsive are they? Did they answer your question? Did they blow you off? Did they call you back at a time that you expect, right? All those things. That's what you're also buying as part of the solution. So put a support call on that. I usually have a blue clicker, but not here. Create a test lab. How many people actually really test in a lab environment? I would say it's less than probably about 20% actually have a true lab. And I say a lab is this room, these systems, are where to test on, right? Most of them try to run in production. Generally not a good idea, and I'll have some examples of that. But it's easy to build a lab, right? EXI server, copy this image, move it into your lab. So build out your environment, then isolate it. Especially when you're talking malware, those type of things. You don't want that thing brought in from outside, infecting the rest of your network. That's just not it's a way to keep your job resume fresh. Your resume is even fresher because you're going to be using it if they find out you're the one that brought the malware in on purpose. Get test samples, right? Don't depend on us giving you samples. I'll guarantee you every sample I'll give you will work. It will prove that our solution works. Doesn't necessarily prove that it's a good security solution, right? But we'll prove something that our solution does work. The last part of this, document. Doesn't have to be huge documentation. Put the name of the server in, the passwords, etc., or you have a password tool. Keep track of that stuff, right? And I'll have an example of that at the end, where some people don't really follow that. So we're talking endpoint solution, which is kind of where Trend Micro sits more. I get my samples for my demos from friends and family, right? My wife likes to get an email. She's now smart enough to say if I get a Word document, she sends it to me. I'll throw it into our sandbox situation to get a report back, right? Great way to test, because that's reality, right? Those emails are coming into your employees. There's other sources of bad stuff out in the world, right? If you don't know who they are, talk amongst your friends. Someone does know those sites are. As a Trend Micro employee, we don't really tell you where to go get the bad stuff. Find out yourself. Google, friend, right? I have a couple garbage email collection addresses. They're free, right? Google has a nice one. I turn off all the spam detection as much as possible on those things. And I say, hey, log in. Absolutely. Here's my email address, right? I'll go all through some of the wrong sites and just put all that email as much as possible. I'm trying to use this to gain samples, right? I might get a piece of that Word document, that PDF that's infected. I can throw it in my environment. Does this solution catch it, right? So use those technologies. Explore yourself. Test performance, right? An endpoint solution. How many times you got something in there, worked great in the lab, great in that stuff, right? That's a pretty clean environment. Again, virtual world. Take that VM, tune it down a little bit, right? Pull some of the resources off, right? Then throw it through it. Create your worst example or worst case scenario, right? If someone is running a high CPU situation, go grab that application, put it in the lab, and put that solution on there, right? Mimic your environment, because again, this is what's going to be rolled out. If you pick this thing wrong, you're going to be fighting this for years. On the gateway side, a little bit more on the rule stuff, right? If I create a wrong rule, how damaging can it be, right? Can I find out where it is, where my mistake is? I'll give you an example. I work for a company that did firewall management software, and I was at a very large bank. Now in the U.S., their cleanup rule was all sources, all destinations, all ports were allowed. And I looked at him and said, you don't have allowed changes in your request for rule changes, are you? He goes, no. I said, yeah, could you allow everything in? Most people call up and make a rule change. And he goes, I think I know what happened. They had an emergency situation, right? Someone couldn't get something in. It's probably a higher level executive, so he creates a rule to get them functional, right? How do you go back and troubleshoot that, right? How do you go back and clean that stuff up? Should be part of that gateway solution. Then if it's a secure web gateway, right? The Palo Alto, the Fortinets, right? You have that whole sample of malware or sites, etc. Start using that to pump through it, right? Validate those things work, right? This is your life. So what happens when it fails, right? You get it out and put it in production, right? That's when you find out it doesn't scale, right? It doesn't work in productions. The reports that we promised you doesn't quite match what the guy who wanted this solution version 1 in the beginning, right? Pain in the ass to manage, right? How many times have you seen that once you start getting more than a couple hundred systems, all of a sudden it's like, I can't find where that system is. I can't figure out how to make a rule change. This thing is all scattered over the park. When it's 5, 10 systems, it's pretty easy to see, right? So if you remember that case, you'll see those things out and you can actually make a better evaluation of that piece of software. That last line, how many people remember Tivoli? There's some people with gray hair in here. Tivoli was a great solution. They had everything on it, right? And we used to make a joke because it's mostly shelfware, right? They didn't do a lot of testing, and all of a sudden they put it on the shelf, and you could see, and we used to do the meetings, there'd be a box of Tivoli on the shelf. It's like, well, you put it in production. It goes, well, we tried, and it's too much work, and it doesn't work well. And you can see that, and they paid a lot of money for it, right? Well, in today, right, it's all software downloads. You don't get that advantage of seeing a bad mistake. It's just some software and some link, right? So when it fails drastically, right? And again, you're going to have to deal with it later. So let me tell you a story of a bad POC that I had to deal with. Trend Micro sends an endpoint encryption solution. We install client and we encrypt the whole Windows drive. It's a great solution, it's very secure. Well, this engineer was the new guy, right? Junior guy, and he was actually fairly young too. Maybe his first job out of college, maybe his second job. In charge of this POC to prove this encryption works. And his test plan was, did it work? He turned on encryption, yeah, they encrypted the drive, right? He had no plan how it's going to roll out. He just tested on his own lab, his own laptop, etc. Anyone want to guess what happened here? Okay. Well, he's done the tested. We encrypted the drive. Yeah, it worked, and he was able to log in, etc. And that's great, fun. We start wiping out his environment, right? We have a policy server which hands out those keys. And there's a SQL database. Well, he got rid of those. And he was logged into the system. So, oh, okay, well, he logged out. Next morning, he logged back in. Well, the encryption comes in. Log in. Couldn't log in. He forgot his admin password because he didn't write it down. He was unable to log into his encrypted system. He goes, okay, I can't get in my system. What's the back door? Format. And he goes, well, what do you mean? I can't get in my system. What way can I get into my client? I said, well, we could give you that key. Anyone else could give you that key, which totally breaks encryption. He was literally out of luck. He actually had to format his system. Because, for one, he didn't have a plan. He didn't document anything. And he tested in his own lab system or his own laptop, right? How many times you get antivirus, right? What if it blows up something else? Well, you can't send the emails off, right? All those type of things that could happen with their own stuff. People use lab systems, right, anymore. Again, if it's malware, right, it could infect something. We might not catch it. It might be something brand new, but at least if it's in a lab, you isolate it and we could do something about it. Home systems, not a good solution. So to wrap it up, right, talk to your vendors, right? You already have that solution in-house. Talk to them. What do you have new? Another situation we had is they had an old version of it, right? We released some new versions. They didn't ask, right? So sometimes just sit down, schedule that meeting, talk to them, right? We'll try to sell you, yes, and it's maybe something. You might get a free pen. Might get some other gotchas out of it, but at least you have some knowledge of what's coming out. Some of the future stuff, but also it's a lot easier to purchase, right? Because it's a lot of times you have buying agreements, etc. So it makes that process faster. Now you have to know how to do as much research to compare it, and it might work just as well, right? You could go through a more limited POC, a little less time on your stuff to test this stuff. Then else, I dedicate the time, right? This is going to be in your production, right? Don't spend that 5 minutes on your way home from work and check it out. Say, hey, it looks great. Spend some time, right? Throw the real data into it. Work yourself into it. Look at it, how it's going to happen. Put it in a real life scenario, right? Have someone else make a rule change. Can you find that rule change? Can you actually recover from a bad thing? Does support actually answer your call, right? How many times have bad support happen, right? You wish, oh, I wouldn't have bought that if I didn't know support was that bad, right? Well, make the phone call before you purchase, right? Validate that support's good. Build a lab, get it approved, right? A lot of times, the security guys don't like you bringing malware into stuff, but you know what? That's the best way to test this stuff, right? End of the day, put it in something you can mimic that environment. Then if it breaks and blows up, you're not stopped on work. You're not stopping that revenue clock. Because end of the day is the revenue is what stops or what keeps you employed, right? If the company's not making money, they're not going to be paying you any money eventually, right? So get it approved, make sure it actually works. And make it real world. Don't just use our test data. Don't use the ICAR virus and say, oh yeah, we catch viruses. Yeah, you catch a sample. It's been around for 20 years. Prove it works, right? There's enough malware out there in the world, new stuff coming out. Validate that solution is going to catch that stuff. All right? Don't trust us, Trend Micro, or the other guys. Test that in your real world. Then document, right? Put your passwords in. Write what you did in that environment. Make a note of, you say, hey, we called support. Support said they're going to call back in 2 hours, then they didn't call back. And you had to send an email off to the SC. And the SCs, we had to get us to go back into the site and get the guys call you back. Document all that, because that's part of that solution. Maybe it's a great solution, but you go, I just can't handle that kind of support issues, right? Go to level 2. Then you can go through it. Once you have that list, you can go back and say, you know what, support was a big issue here. this is why we're not going to purchase. We might pay a little bit more and get a little bit less, but at least we got the support when it does fail. We could get resolved, right? The answer to the phone calls, right? So that's generally why I say one of the POCs, right? How many people have had a bad POC happen? A couple. What was the main fault? What failed? Support. Support is, it's amazing how many times that is actually a problem. Did you actually put it in production and find out support was bad, or did you catch it before? Yeah. Do you own a POC? Yeah, you had something? Went into production, right? A lot of times we hear it's like, oh, worked great in the lab, right? And as soon as we got to 1,000 systems, the thing failed, right? That's also very reality. A lot of this stuff tests out well in a small environment. You put it into 1,000 systems and you're scattered across the world, these things, it usually fails. I mean, how did that happen, right? You thought it was going to scale, you put it in production, and just couldn't handle the loads. You had to re-architect your whole environment to get the solution that didn't work. All right? I see a couple nodding heads. Anyone else had that? Anyone else had a bad POC where you actually trashed your own system? No? No trashing your own system? That kid was mad. I couldn't help him. I mean, it's nice, but and the other side is, why did they let the junior guy test that out, right? Well, because he had more time. But he had no, the other problem was during that setup, he had no knowledge of who to call for the SQL database access or to build the server. So it took a little time just to get up and running. It was about 2 or 3 weeks just to get the POC started because he had no concept of who he needs to call. So he always had to, well, who would I call for SQL? Well, he had to call his manager. So and the other side is, they didn't know, how do you know that junior guy is going to know what's an encryption product they should buy, right? There's lots of out there. Questions? I've been doing this for a while. I tried to keep it down to the short period of time I had. Any questions? Anyone want to say bad things about Trend Micro? I could bring the sales guy in. All right. That's my presentation. You guys are all very quiet.